So for our next speaker is Tom Lowe. Tom is a registered architect and certified planner based in Charlotte, North Carolina, actively consulting with over 150 multi-day charrettes, designing and directed numerous award-winning new urbanism neighborhood projects. Come on up, Tom.
Thank you. So, thank you for having me. I have a lot of images. I'm more of a designer planner than a policy planner, and so it's really important for people to see the images. That's a big part of it. And some of them are kind of small. So if anybody wants to, there's lots of room up front. I know y'all are very modest in Maine, like to sit in the back, but if you want to come up here, that would be great. Because you'll see stuff, you'll really get a lot more out of it. So anyway, all right, a few people. As you heard, I live in Charlotte. I've had a great career doing what I do, which is mainly designing walkable, sustainable neighborhoods. And I've worked all over the place, all over North America, other countries. And one of the main things that I've learned over the years is every place is different. The culture's different, the issues are different. And in New England, you are exceptionally different, okay? And so I was in Portland for 2 days wandering around, then I came up here for a couple days. And trying to really be a sponge and hear what people are talking about. A lot of frustration, but also there's like little subtle things, really significant successes and accomplishments. So, and you're kind of modest about talking about it. But anyway, I'd love to hear more about it. I'll be around. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of engagement here. We'll do some visual preferencing, some things like that, if we can get this to work. Okay, how are we doing? Okay, so there's kind of different patterns to development. The historic pattern that we all know that's been around for centuries are these compact walkable villages that are inclusive, holistic, self-sustaining. And when you fly over places like this area, you see these beautifully intact, from above, way above, villages surrounded by agriculture and landscape and open space and natural areas. And then there are other places like Orlando that basically, grew in the early 20th century, mid-20th century, and basically embraced unadulterated sprawl. Now, the ingredients are the same, places to live, places to work, places to gather, places to get stuff. But the way they're arranged is a lot differently, obviously. And one of the things about the quality of life here is people love these traditional villages because of all the quality of life things that it offers, and you know what they are. But there are things that have happened in more recent times that have become a problem, and that's what I've heard about quite a bit. Where the ideal, this is called the townless highway, and the highwayless town, where basically these villages are set, in the landscape and basically connected together as a pattern, as a regional pattern. Now, what has happened is this type of thing. The towns have been gutted by road widenings, and basically all the little, walk-to businesses have been strewn and littered out on the highway simply because, people can do it. And that's a crying shame. Who wants to travel through that type of corridor, these kind of crud strips? And so I think that's one of the issues. This was my commute this morning, a block away. It's a big issue. We couldn't actually get here. The person that was staying with us actually got here by walking quicker from 7 blocks away. And then we finally turned around and actually, because it's an old traditional town, there's a back way. And we found that there's connectivity here, which is kind of one of those things you really want to support. So those two images I showed you, those aerial images, I actually like to draw, so I do all these little cartoon drawings like this. But the idea is to compare these patterns of development in a way that maybe you can understand more so that you can make better choices. Because there are choices, and they're not, some of them are really hard, but some of them are pretty easy. This is that traditional pattern of these compact, walkable, neighborhoods that in larger cities, like Portland, these walkable kind of neighborhoods come together and form, a town or a city. And then there's some other ones that are smaller, which are basically maybe just like a hamlet or a smaller kind of single neighborhood that's walkable, like where we are, that are a lot smaller. But the one thing they have in common is the pattern in terms of what's happening inside each of these kind of walkable nodes, like a 5-minute walk from edge to center, maybe even worst case, a 15-minute walk. As opposed to this kind of oozing out, the old city gets started and get gutted, the roads get widened, parking lots replace buildings. As you go out, the density gets lower, and the open space is not really, real open space. It's just maybe a berm and a buffer between different segregated land uses. It's not really that useful, and generally it's not in locations where the natural ecosystem can continue to benefit. And this type of kind of like really, really inefficient land use is something that's basically been happening, and that's what you're facing now. And how can you address that and maybe kind of come back to that if you want to? So I'm going to take you through a little kind of like raise your hand type things, if you don't mind, to help me understand. I'm trying to understand things here. And so if you can help me with this, I'm going to ask you where you prefer to live. There's no right answer. It's just a matter of choice. Oops, sorry. It starts off pretty easy. All right. Here are a couple of choices. As a preface, these are the same size houses on the same size lots. It's just basically how the public realm is detailed. And in this case, this is kind of designed to make your cars happy. This is designed more to make the people happy in terms of, the public realm. All right, so let's have a show of hands. How many people prefer to live in the upper image? Anyone? Okay. All right. How many prefer to live in the bottom? Okay, great. So people are raising your hands. That's a good sign. Even though I noticed to see some more modest people back there. You're not quite sure. You want to participate. Okay, it gets a little harder. So this is the same size house on the same size lot here. This is designed for walkability. You can see, you still have a street. You have a planting strip with trees. You have sidewalks. You have front porches. This is a really nice new urbanist project in Utah. And then this is a coastal village in Beaufort, South Carolina. Same size house, same size lot, but you can see here things are a little bit more subtle. More increased green, thoughts about green infrastructure. So let's show of hands. How many people prefer to live on the upper side? Okay, a lot. Okay, and then how many prefer to live in the bottom? Keep raising your hand. Okay, great. All right, let's keep going. Pretty simple. And there's some of the thoughts here really are that, in this case, they just kind of bulldozed everything and started over. In this case, when you're working with existing landscape, if there's a tree in a way, you don't bulldoze it, you go around it. It's a lot more of a thoughtful approach where you're laying more lightly on the land. Okay, so here's another image, same image from the last here at the top. And then here's another image in Oklahoma. It's a new urbanist village. Same size house, same size lot. And this is a public street because this is a new town. We chartered and wrote our own zoning and everything. This is increased green space. So this is kind of curious. It starts getting curious here when you start looking at that. So let's see, show of hands. How many people prefer to live on the upper image? Okay. How many people on the lower? More. That's fantastic. This is the first time that has ever happened. I'm serious. I've done this for a long time. It's usually about 2/3 here and 1/3 there. This is here, 2/3 here. Okay, thank you. I'm getting it now, okay? You like the what? The walkway, boardwalk, yeah. This is a walk. Yeah, it's really phenomenal. Now, what's interesting about Carlton Landing, this is a new town of Carlton Landing. It's the first chartered real town in Oklahoma in 75 years. Like, they chartered a town. That's what they had to do. They had to reestablish a place they wanted to live in because everything else was so difficult to do. They just said, let's create a new one, find the right location, and come up with our own rules that we really love. And that way, people work together. There are streets like this every other street here. So it's not a matter of that's the only choice you get in a real town, a real walkable town. It's just that some people prefer to live here and some people prefer to live here. The people that are one street over actually like that kind of quality, but they love hanging out with these people because these people throw the best parties, right? You know that, right? Okay, very good. You should see the place we're staying in, by the way, talking about a party house. So here are some images I took this morning on a jog. And again, it's about basically your preference in terms of lifestyle. Are you more urban, gregarious, extroverted, want to be on top of things, want to hang out in the middle of the action? Or are you somewhere in between? Or are you actually someone that just wants to be an extrovert? You're extrovert, introvert, and quiet, and want to be left alone. Let's go through these and you pick out. This is basically the idea that you're living above a main street. And this is just one example, but just think in terms of a place that you'd like to live above the main street. Or just a little neighborhood shopping street. Second option is a more urban neighborhood. The setbacks are shallower, the density's higher. And then in this case, this is like one street over here. It's more of a single family, larger lot, shady trees. This is a really nice traffic calm street, sidewalks, pretty good. And then this is Great Diamond Island. I don't know if you know that, but anyway, this is this is a real rural quality of life here. So let's go through. How many people would prefer to live here? A few, okay. Next, how about here? Okay, a few more. Here. Majority, okay, and then here. Okay, so these get about 50-50, and 40-40, and then this is like 10 and 10. Okay, that's really helpful too. I kind of guessed that. I didn't hear it. Someone repeat it. I didn't. You live there. Congratulations. I spent 2 days there. East Side or East Bay or whatever. Yeah, unbelievable, fabulous. They even have pickleball there, by the way, now. So, okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. Now, one of the things about sprawl is that it's here before you know it. Like, where did that come from? It was just a little something or another, and then all of a sudden it just kind of like everything just got. What are we going to do? It's too late. How can we, we thought just, letting in a little bit would be okay. But, let's just see how this might happen. Okay. This is a rural farmhouse in, low density area or no density. This is actually on an auto feed here. So this is existing farm. This is kind of what you see on the outskirts when you're driving between your traditional towns and villages. And then, and this is what happens. The farmer's like, I need to make a little money, had a bad crop year or whatever, that kind of thing. Prices are too high. Maybe if I just sell a few lots, So he sells a few lots along the front and just, it's not, the water's there, the septic tanks are sewer. It's pretty easy, some few houses. It's okay, right? You're okay with that. Maybe. But then, a few years go by and, that was a pretty good idea, and there's kind of a need for other things, for more things. So then this is more difficult. You actually have to build a street. So you're putting money out. and you build a street, and you kind of run it back into your farmland, and basically kind of the same deal. Okay, look familiar? And when you're driving down the highway, here, it's just, you start seeing, it doesn't really look that different because the first houses kind of took away that natural beauty for just these kind of like, rural homes. And then, over the years again, and this may not be like, it may just be months, is that the farm, he couldn't sell the stuff back here because it wasn't along the road. But at a certain point in time, there's a demand, there's growth, things are coming. So what happens basically is he sells the whole thing, he or she, and you end up getting this. Now, this is, kind of what's happening today. A subdivision, with a entry feature, and the amenity is the clubhouse and pool. And the last thing they want to do is to actually see the beautiful farmhouse because, the architecture of the new stuff is just so horrible, typically, or cheap, that, it would diminish people's, opinion of it by seeing, something nice. And also, so they basically screen it. They, basically screen it with berms and buffers and try to hide it. So even the farm family, they're not connected to the neighborhood around them either. It's this whole just kind of disjointing that comes on, the newcomers and the existing historic farms. Now, this has happened all over the country. Hasn't happened that much here. In places where I live, like I live, the area between Charlotte and Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, that whole corridor is just filled up with this stuff, And of course, what happens is, great idea, it was a good idea. We thought it was a good idea. But then what happens is that all the traffic, is basically dumping out on this old farm to market road, and you get that kind of, traffic I was showing the image of before. Now, here's kind of like a little summary, just so you can see that kind of like gradation and how it happens over time. And like, well, gosh, we just thought this was going to be okay. But, what happened? So, let's wake up a little bit, see where we can go with this. Because we want to know how much sprawl is enough. So we're going to have a little show of hands here. I'm going to take you through this. Okay. Is this okay? Anybody? How many people don't want this? Raise your hands. Okay. Okay. Would you be okay with like 70% sprawl? Anybody? Show of hands, you're okay with that? Okay. 40%. Is there some kind of like zoning that lets you do like a cluster that gives you like, develop on 40% of the land? Is anybody okay with this? No? Nobody? Last chance. Okay. Some of you are thinking about, oh yeah, that's that policy we have, right? Okay. And then, well, just a little bit. Just how about a little bit? Anyone? Okay. First hands come up, maybe 5%. All right, that's really interesting. I thought there would be more hands sooner, to be honest. Simply because you all are mostly in the policy position and you know the reality of things, right? Pardon me? Well, let's do it again. Okay, let me see if I can. Is this realistic? Okay. Is this realistic? No. So somewhere in between? Okay. Sorry, I have to cycle these. Okay, going. Okay, gone. Now, one of the things I want to bring up now, because I'm more of an urban designer, what I think about is I look around. I'm always looking around. I looked around this morning. I've been here for a couple days. And you just you see things, and it's, what you see in front of you may be a lot different from what the statistics say sometimes. And sometimes you get into these huge debates about 20%, 40%. You get into everything is a quantity. Everything is quantifiable. Oh, we like 12 units to the acre density, but we don't like 17 units to the acre density. Well, what does it look like? Well, East Portland, downtown Portland is probably 17. Looks pretty good. So, there are things like that it just depends, but you don't have to, it's just a matter of choice. The thing that I'd like to talk a little bit more about today, if the choice could be qualitative versus quantitative. And you think in terms of just physical form and design and relationships, spatial quality, and basically proximity is so important as well. And so more little cartoons, but this is an example of basically how we've been growing since the mid-20th century. And basically the way that we've actually grown is all the ingredients that make up a real neighborhood with everything in it, sustainable neighborhood, come out one ingredient at a time. The housing comes out as a subdivision, right? The shopping comes out along the strip or as a strip shopping center or a big box or the malls, even though they're all mostly dead at this point. And then the civic spaces, the beautiful churches that, at the terminated vista along a street where you see the church steeple at the end, those types of things, they come out as a big box on the side of the highway. And then the workplace ultimately, I don't know if you have that much around here, comes out as a suburban office park. Basically, commercial buildings plop down in the middle of a big parking lot. And so it's a whole different kind of, it's basically designed to make cars happy, as opposed to the way we used to grow, which was basically when it was time to grow, we annexed out and said, this is where our next neighborhood will be. And it's going to have everything in it, affordable, affluent, mixed use, housing choice, lifestyle choice. Like basically you can live above the shop or you can live on the edge in a rural home. But basically you're always within, say, a 5 or 10 minute walk of where you need to go, so you're not clogging all the streets up with traffic. Now, what I've been doing for the past 30 years is this. And in some places, we can pull that off. We can pull it off actually pretty exceptionally well. Some cases, it's kind of a compromise. But it's something that can be done, and that's what I want you all to think about, because you can choose this. You don't have to just say, okay, we're going to do 40% sprawl, but that's it, not 45, just 40. And so when you start getting into conversations about policy, don't talk about numbers if you can avoid it. Talk about quality of life. Preface everything in terms of, but I love living here because I can walk to, meet my friends, that type of thing. Now, this kind of started happening about 30, 35 years ago. It was almost by accident because we were working on a new resort on the Florida Panhandle called Seaside. And Seaside basically said, let's just skip the condo canyon. Let's actually do something better. And we actually said, let's look at all these small little towns all the way up through Florida and use that as a model. And basically, we learned a lot. And ultimately, we started something. And we said, well, we've got to frame this in a way that we understand what the principles are. And they're listed here. You can't see them, but I'm just going to preface. These are the basic ideas. And basically, the idea is that this diagram tries to explain it, like I have before. Traditional walkable, sustainable neighborhoods have these, generally these 4 ingredients: places to live, places to work, places to get things, and places to gather. Same thing here. Again, just kind of blown up a little bit. Here's the housing is here. The workplace is here, the shopping is here, and the gathering places are here: schools, churches, community centers, etc. The problem with this model is that if you live here, which is pretty close to this right here, basically the incentive is to get in your car and to drive. And what happens is, like, the average American household, believe it or not, generates something like 13.7 car trips a day. The average household. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? Now, in this model, what we've determined, because of the connectivity and proximity, you can capture between 1/3 and 2/3 of those car trips. That's pretty good. Because in this case, just to go out and buy a quart of milk, just to take your child to school, you have to go out and hit the collector road. And so you get this kind of gummed up. So if there's only one way without any kind of internal connectivity, then basically you're basically saying, okay, I'm just going to, the rest of my life, I'm just going to make my car as happy as I can, you know? And, you know, I'll just have to put my needs aside. So, not really, but, you know. So, one of the things that we developed is like, well, what does walkability mean? Well, the idea is that ideally, and it's called the neighborhood unit, is that everything is ideally within a 5-minute walk. And if you go back centuries, especially in some of the old world places, that was something that was just common because they had carts and horses at best, and so basically it was a necessity, but also it became, the unintended consequences of sprawl is that the romance of the freedom of the car turned into the ball and chain of the car, and so that that's where you are. You have no choice, and so the 5-minute walk here. There's not much here. It just keeps going, by the way. It just keeps going and going and going, 10s, 20s, 100 acres. And the 5-minute walk to the farm where there's nothing, you can't get to it. You have to climb over the berm, to get to it, even if there's like a little farm stand here. So basically you're just, you're going down the highway, looking for a shopping center, that type of thing. Now, people don't like to see development, but I just want to show you some differences between not so great and better versions of how to do this. People said, okay, well, we need housing choice, and ideally in a 5-minute walk. So we could do it this way. We can build a pod of affordable rentals here in the form of suburban apartment complex. These buildings are plopped down in the middle of parking lots. Some people call this the train wreck model, it looks like, and basically when you walk out your front door, you immediately grab your keys because that's the first thing you see, your car. Then you have the starter housing with this, entry, small entry here. You have a move-up housing with a larger entry feature here. You have the, executive housing, expensive housing with an entry feature with the fake guardhouse. That was something that people used to do there. They were, scared of the people that were across the street. And then, the shopping is the form of the shopping center and the drive-throughs. And then the downsizing condos, in this case, the condos were built first and basically killed the value of all this real estate because this is some huge wall that basically made the amenity private. But people say, yeah, well, this is mixed use, right? This is mixed use. It's mixed income. It's not bad. And you could, theoretically, you're in a 5-minute walk here, but here's what happens. When you live here, you say, okay, I'm going to go meet my friends for lunch here. So you say, okay, so you start walking. You walk out here. There's no sidewalk here. It's just a big berm. And you're walking down here. The cars are screaming by. And basically, then you have to wade through the parking lot, to get to where you're going. And it's miserable. It's absolutely miserable. And in fact, when you're walking here, the people that drive by feel sorry for you. Right? It's not like, oh, I'm walking today. Oh, what happened? Did a car break down? Oh, poor thing. Okay, right. So this is one model, and then here's another model. This is the same lots, starter, move up, executive, same number of lots, same number of mixed use. It's just that it transitionally, and this is the difference. The other one I showed you, I call coarse. It's a coarse grain urbanism. And then in this case, this is a fine grain urbanism. And the idea that all those things, those ingredients, you can do as little as a block or block and a half. And it doesn't take much. And in fact, you can walk out the front door and see this. You've got your neighborhoods around here have all these different things going on, the older areas. It's not that obvious here, but other places you can see that, this fine grainness. This grain, that really makes it a real place because you're connected together. The school teacher may be living in a smaller cottage where the large family with the kids that are going to this, being taught by the school, you're meeting them. This is called chance social encounter. There are things like that where you actually can meet on the street corner. Oh, hi, how are you? How are the kids doing in school? Well, you know, that kind of stuff. So here's a choice, preferences. How many people think this is, excuse me, let me back up. How many people think this is more realistic? Maybe that's a better way of saying it. Or is this more realistic? All right, let's show. How many people think this is more realistic here? Show of hands. How many people think this is more realistic? Why do you say that? This is totally illegal. You can do this. You can't do this. Huh? All right, make dreams a reality, like Disney or something. How do you make it legal? There are good people in the room that can show you how to do that, and I can show you how to do that. You're working on it. You're actually working on it. But I just want to make sure you understand what you need to do. That's what this is about. Like, because when you do this kind of stuff, and I work with, you know, those evil developers all the time. I work with a lot of municipalities too. There are thousands of little decisions along the way that you have to make the right one in order to get to something like this. And in this case, this was a resort town because it's almost idealistic. This is Seaside, Florida. If y'all have ever seen the Truman Show movie, they used the entire town as their stage set. They priced it up, you know, even more. But the idea that this became so, it really captured, you know, people's imagination in a way that just resonated, and became kind of the model of saying, oh wow, this is possible. Can we do it? Can we do it in like real places as opposed to just like, you know, on the beach? And that's what I've been doing. And we do them with charrettes. This is like an old New York Times article about in 7 days designing a new traditional town. We do them by doing feedback loops and engagement. We don't go off in a corner and come up with ideas. We actually do them with everyone. We design them together, which is really fun. I love it. You have to have a thick skin. People are looking over your shoulder, you know, telling you what to do. I love it. It's a great way to work. The other thing that I have to disclose, I come from 8 generations of engineers. There are engineers in the room, transportation, civil. I see you out here. So I'm the renegade in the family. I'm the architect planner. And engineers don't like to listen to creative people, so that's a challenge. But I have kind of an engineering mindset. So 5 minutes, okay. So I said, you know, one of the things we need to do is figure out how to do the infrastructure, the green, and actually, you know, start off looking at the watersheds and the ecosystems first before we start planning and design. So I wrote this handbook called the Light Imprint Handbook, and it's a toolbox. It's like a field guide. And you can pick out things that work in your area, and you can make much greener, you can provide much greener solutions. And actually, I can sit down and I can really work with the engineers. You know, because I can talk their talk. You know, I'm not as bright as they are, but I can. You know, I'm a generalist, and I'm thinking about many other things besides just, you know, capacity and volume and, you know, conduits for traffic, all that kind of good stuff. Now, the thing I don't have time for, but I'll just flip through these. I was asked to kind of show some images of some. This is a coastal village that we wove the entire landscape through. It's called Habersham. It's in Beaufort, South Carolina. I just want you to look at the trees and also the different types of, you know, townhouses, a main street with people living above the shops, cottages, really beautiful mansions, and, you know, just and all kind of set in this beautiful open space. This is a mountain village in North Carolina near Asheville. It's kind of that kind of shingle style, arts and crafts, you know, Adirondack kind of like character. It has a little village center. It has big houses. It has townhouses. It has smaller cottages. And you can see it's front porch friendly. And, you know, this is a washover bridge, you know, that it's like we're trying to kind of, again, lay lightly on the land. That's why we call it the Light Imprint Handbook. This is a beautiful project that's modeled on historic Charleston. It's a coastal village. This is probably one of the most elegant projects we've ever, you know, communities we've ever worked on. And it really got priced up. It's the same This is way inland, but it's basically the values here are the same as things right on the ocean. So there is a good, because of the scarcity, the prices do go up. I do a lot of infill. This is a 10-acre project that the mayor of Greensboro, North Carolina, called 10 Acres that transformed our city. He said it's the best project in the last 50 years. And basically, it was a redevelopment project where we wove things in and revalued a lot of what was there. And I'll just flip through these. This is taking an asphalt parking lot and turning it into a city square in my hometown of Roanoke, Virginia. And then these are some small pocket neighborhoods that I've designed over the years. People say, well, how many acres do you need? And I said, well, how about one? And so this is a 1.5 acre project. This is green infrastructure. This is part of the stormwater management. I love the scale of it. This is another one that's in Carlton Landing. It's kind of a horseshoe-shaped green. Also, this is the kind of green infrastructure. By the way, the kids love this stuff. I'm sorry, I'm about to run out of time, but in suburbia, when it starts raining, the kids go in and play video games, right? But in Carlton Landing, when it starts raining, the kids come out to play because that's when the fun starts. The water, they get out, they take little paper boats, they float them down, they're splashing, they're hopping, they call it rock hopping. I don't know if you do that up here. You go up these rocky streams and you hop everywhere as a kid. It's my favorite thing to do when I was growing up. This is more, and you do have a model nearby. This is in Scarborough, outside of Portland. Eastern Village was started about 15 years ago. A new urbanist developer, he wanted to do all this. And he worked really hard, probably 1,000% harder than most, D.R. Horton people. And basically created this village. And you should go see it. You can walk around and check it out. We went on a walking tour a couple days ago. Here's the layout, just to show you. Townhouses, houses, cottages, accessory dwellings. He's doing multifamily, like nice apartment, houses, that aren't too big, that come right up to the street. Parking, you don't see parking lots very much. It's great. Now, and then the last image, I just flipped through is because to convince people that green infrastructure works, oh, it's just way too expensive. Oh, it's just hard to do. I said, no, if you do it, you don't embrace all these gizmos and products that are out there, but you just actually you make things, from scratch. You can actually reduce your costs by 30%. And so part of my job working with developers is to convince them to do things. If I can tell them it costs less money and looks great, as opposed to just big pipes and inlets and curb and gutter and heavy duty this and that, then basically we can really make a difference. And so I do these cost studies and basically prove over and over again. I'll just flip through these and I'll be done. Here's one that's in Pittsburgh, North Carolina, near Raleigh. It's a small little half-acre infill site behind the oldest house in town, which is here. This is the old backyard. I think it's like a 1 acre total. And we did a little pocket neighborhood in there of cottages. And the engineers came back and said, well, we're going to have to blow this out as a big crater, and you're not going to be able to use your green space for anything. We're going to put a chain link fence around it. It'll really work well that way. You're going to love that, And then we came back and said, but if you actually do this light imprint model, then basically you can save, $3,000 a lot, or you can, a couple $100,000 total, and you also you keep all your historic trees, and you get actually human green space as opposed to that. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Thank
you, Tom.